By now you've heard the news, and what you're seeing right now are just some of the tweets that former Bungie employees made upon learning that they'd been laid off. You've got some newer Bungie recruits, some who have been there for the medium term, and even some who have been around since Halo Combat evolved, like our beloved composer Michael Salvatori. Some of the key talent that have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to bring you some of your favorite moments, weapons, activities, and events have now found themselves unceremoniously dumped. To say that this was a betrayal by Bungie to not only their own, but to the millions of fans who religiously enjoy their own game is somewhat of an understatement. Especially when you consider that Bungie themselves said in the wake of the Sony acquisition that there would be no layoffs whatsoever. But whenever two companies merge, especially in the case of an acquisition, there is always administrative fallout, without fail. In this case, the grace period seemed to be roughly 1 year, with the bean counters then taking command and making redundancies where they deemed appropriate. And from what I've seen of the layoffs on Twitter, the approach seemed fairly scattergun in nature. There was no rhyme nor reason as to how the layoffs happened. It wasn't a case of certain people under a certain level of experience were just culled, or certain departments were fine and some were not. It seemed like every bit of the company got hit, with the exception of a few key departments. But more than that, it really just felt like everybody had been reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet and then crossed out when they were deemed too expensive or easily replaceable. Now, we don't know if there were more people than were actually needed, but what we do know, and what the actions of the bean counters would strongly suggest, is that the payroll at the time was just too bloated. It was too much, too expensive. And so drastic, dispassionate, random action was taken. It seemed like seniority and sentiment was not a factor in this decision-making at all. Or at least that's what the firing of Michael Salvatori, his composing partner Michael Seacrest, and half the community team would seem to indicate. And this, unfortunately, would be right in line with the industry-wide trend of layoffs and downsizing. I think something like 6,000 game developers alone this year have lost their job, perhaps a lot more than what we've heard of. But it's too easy to blame Sony, because even if they are completely responsible, there is one constant that has remained unchanged throughout all of this, and that's Bungie's own leadership. The ones calling the shots are the ones who created their own mess to begin with. They're the reason why so many of these talented, passionate people have been brought in, chewed up, and then spat right back out. People who have fought to give us a product that is inclusive and accessible. People who have poured their heart and souls into creating something that creates memories and starts new friendships. And moreover, just people who are world-class at what they do, now at the mercy of somebody hitting enter on a spreadsheet. I don't think they knew that this would happen like this when they were going into the deal. And I don't think we're going to know exactly how this happened or why it happened or what was the motivation behind it, unless some ex-Bungie employees talk to Jason Schreier under the condition of anonymity, or when CEO P. Parson retires and writes a tell-all memoir. But what is absolutely clear is that the well-being and dignity of the employees who gave their all for the game we all love were hard done by. They did not deserve this sort of treatment. And they certainly did not deserve this tone-deaf tweet by Mr. Parsons. Maybe if he had kept more of the social and community teams around, they could have maybe told him to not say this. And on top of all this, the final shape is reportedly being delayed from late February to sometime in June, which means we are in for a 7-month-long Destiny 2 season. And if the current understanding of Destiny 2 production cycles is anything to go by, we're not going to be able to get anything in between to fill the time. In case it's not more clear than it has ever been before, Bungie are now betting the entire future of this franchise on the final shape and the subsequent shift to episodes. Delaying the release is the logical thing to do, given that so many influential people were cut all across the company. But more than that, this absolutely 100% needs to go well for Bungie. Because of everybody that I've spoken to, my colleagues, my clanmates, my friends, and all of you guys reading your comments in the comment section of pretty much every video that I've made in the last 3 months, the current sentiment is that people are going to leave en masse for the final shape. Whether it's because they want to bookend 10 years of Destiny and say, all right, that was a great 10 years, I'm out, thank you very much for the memories. Or if it's a case that Bungie have already lost them and they're riding it out until the conclusion of the Light and Dark saga. The only reality where people stay for the final shape, or at least from the people I've spoken to, is if they deliver the mother of all bangers in terms of an expansion. Like, it would have to top Forsaken, the Taken King, and the Witch Queen put together. It has to be huge. And based off Lightfall, the gross over-monetization of this game, the frankly quite crap loot that we've had for the last couple of years, and the continued neglect of the core gameplay experience in Destiny 2, I frankly do not have a lot of hope for this game after the final shape. I just don't. I don't think people are going to put up with it anymore if they cannot stick the final landing and go above and beyond. It's not even enough to justify $60 or whatever the cost of the expansion actually is. And if they don't get this right, Destiny could very much go the way of the MCU post-Endgame if they do not 1000% dedicate themselves to making the best thing they can possibly make. And to that end, a delay makes a lot of sense. With all that being said, does this mean that Destiny 2 is going to die? Absolutely not. Franchises don't just stop. Especially because, this and other content creators just said some mean things on the internet. Absolutely not. And Bungie are not going to let it stop because this is the project that is funding all the other projects, including Marathon. And I'm personally not going anywhere right now, both as a player and a creator. I still want to hold Bungie's feet to the fire, and I also want to celebrate their wins. But if they don't deliver on the final shape, then I think that myself and quite a few other content creators are going to be facing a reckoning. I just don't have a lot of faith in Bungie's leadership team right now. Seeing the layoffs yesterday, seeing how dispassionate and random it was, it really felt like we all attended a funeral that we didn't ask to go to. My thoughts, first and foremost, are with everybody who got laid off, and I hope that you guys aren't off your feet for too long. May you all find work soon, and more importantly, may you all find employers who treat you the way you deserve to be treated.